Howdy, YouTube. What's up? This is Steven, and welcome back. All right, so I'd watched a video of YouTube user Chrissy's, and it was about Tinashe, and Tinashe kind of like blaming colorism for her stalled music career and whatnot. It really got me to thinking, like, basically, the question I have and want to present and talk about is, are light skinned, this also includes mixed race, mixed, biracial, multiracial, etc., right? Are light skinned folks allowed to complain about colorism in any way, shape, or form? Anyway. And I want to explore this topic, okay? A little bit, all right? Let's see, how do dark-skinned people feel? Let's put that out there, put that question out there. How do dark-skinned people feel when they hear light-skinned people complaining about colorism? Like, oh, I have it so tough, I was called names, people tried to cut my hair, and I think the women be saying that. People, try to fight me and attack me. And Tinashe said, like, I forgot exactly what she said, but basically she blamed colorism for her style career. And I think Black Twitter and Black social media, they weren't really feeling it. And they let her know that they weren't really feeling it, right? And Christy did bring up some good points about, this situation. Like, oh, well, you kind of got further than a lot of other Black women did or have gotten, especially darker skinned Black women. And Chrissy also perhaps alluding to the fact that perhaps it's just, she feeling kind of salty because she felt like she should be at a certain place because she light skinned, right? And this actually is not the first time that Tinashe has spoken about, colorism. I think she has spoken about it before, saying something to the effect of like, well, I don't really see it working in my favor or working in, for me in my career. So she's kind of like denying colorism or like light skin privilege, right? So, to me, Tinashe probably looks to me to be asleep, right? Not woke, quote unquote, asleep and not woke, right? Fast asleep, right? And also, we do have to keep in mind she was raised by a white mom. She may have had her Black dad in her life. I don't know if her parents got divorced or whatever. I assume they're still together, but I don't know that dynamic. But typically, mothers are the custodial parents, and her mother is Caucasian. Her mother's white, so she was raised by a white woman too, which is something that we should kind of like, keep in mind. Not necessarily give someone a pass for, but keep in mind, right? Me personally, and how I feel, I can understand if dark-skinned people feel a certain way about light-skinned people complaining about colorism, because I'm sure dark-skinned people can tell you a whole lot of stories about colorism in and outside the community and how it has affected them. Light-skinned people get it too, not to say that they don't. They have stories to tell too, right? But it does seem sort of weird when we start centering, conversations about the ills and the struggles of colorism around light-skinned folks, right? That's like, it's almost as bad as like centering the ills and the struggles of racism around white people. Like white people tell you about the racism they receive. Like, you ain't really, no, no. I'm not trying to hear that, So I can understand where some dark-skinned people may be coming from in terms of a situation like this. Like, I don't know, it's like, well, dark-skinned people may be like, well, you're more privileged than I am, And also, notice that it was kind of directed toward the Black community, as well, kind of almost kind of like speaking to a certain amount of entitlement that some lighter skinned and biracial folks, especially if you're biracial, be kind of feeling like almost kind of like you almost be feeling like you're entitled to something because you are, mixed or biracial or light skinned. Like you just supposed to have it. Right? It's like, oh, you light, so you gotta be right, right? um, And also, if you live in the area where folks have kind of hyped you up because you're light skinned, I don't know Tinashe's background, so I don't know, but that could be a part of the issue too, because sometimes these light skinned women especially be getting hyped up by dark skinned men, but also by the dark skinned and the brown skinned women, right? Me personally, do I have stories that I could tell about, my encounters with colorism inside the community, and whatnot, and then probably outside the community too. Sure. Of course, we all probably have a story to tell. I'm sure we all have a story to tell, right? Um, but, when I was, especially when I was doing that video about, 10 things I like and dislike about being light skinned, it really sort of did kind of like put things more into perspective, right? Because notice, like, if you did watch that video, right, a lot of the things I was talking about I dislike about being light skin kind of tend to revolve around people not maybe viewing you as black or black enough at times, right? And while that is a struggle, it's like, okay, yeah, all right, but you kind of get the benefits of that too, right? So why you complaining? It's kind of like, well, why you complaining for? You know, I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't be both, ambiguous and unambiguous, like racially ambiguous, but at the same time being unracially ambiguous and wanting to have all that comes with being black. All the good things, and then all the good things that come with not being black. Right? You can't have it both ways. You know. So for that reason and other reasons, I tend not to be so kind of like self-centered when it comes to talking about colorism. I bring up myself and my experiences, of course, because sometimes they factor into what I'm saying, and as well can kind of be used as a good anecdote and a good story to illustrate what I'm talking about. But as far as like sitting up and actually taking up space and speaking about my struggle, my light-skinned struggle, dark-skinned dudes call me Casper, the dark-skinned women said they weren't into me, so it's like, okay, all right. I mean, we got other struggles to worry about. We got more difficult struggles to worry about over here, right? And also, when you kind of do that, sometimes you can sort of take away the attention from the people who really do legitimately have, struggles, especially like the darker skinned people who legitimately have struggles, right? So ultimately, I don't really think people want to hear about a light skinned person's struggle. And also, it kind of comes off weird. It's like you complaining about your privilege, like, who want to hear somebody complain about their privilege? Come on. Do you want to hear a rich person complaining, especially if you're poor or you broke? You want to hear a rich person complaining about being rich? You want to hear a thin person complaining about being thin, right? You want to hear a able-bodied person complaining about being able-bodied? Do you want to hear a white person complaining about their white privilege? No, no, come on. So I think that's part of where people are coming from, too. And as well, people are like, well, you kind of do benefit from light skin privilege, even though it may not seem like it to you. I guess she maybe she feels like her career should be at the status of like a Beyonce or Rihanna. Which she did mention. Like, she didn't mention that, but she said, like, if you a black woman in the industry, or the music industry, you're either Beyonce or Rihanna. And I do agree that kind of like when it comes to the black women, Beyonce and Rihanna in the music sector, right? The singing music sector kind of have that on lock, pretty much, right? While Nicki Minaj has like the female rap sector on lock, you know. But um, they're all light skinned, and you light skinned. I think you're lighter than them actually, and more whiter than them. Um, so perhaps colorism didn't work into your disadvantage. Perhaps there's other reasons, as Chrissy did bring up in her video. Perhaps there's other reasons why your career has not popped off, right? Um, but you know, I say at least she was honest, because that's the thing too. In these conversations about colorism, as well as the other isms, we have to be honest about how we feel, even if it's going to turn some people off. I think honesty is the best policy, so we can really get this conversation going and start analyzing, dissecting, examining these type of the reasons why we feel the way we do, and perhaps have some dialogue and be able to understand and get to a point where, okay, maybe I am having some problematic thoughts about colorism. Perhaps I should be less self-centered, or perhaps look at it in a different way, right? So I do appreciate the honesty, her saying how she really feels. Probably not so much what she actually said, right? And let's flip it around a little bit though. Zendaya Coleman, she actually had spoke out about colorism a little while ago. She said a little thing here and there, something to the effect of like, she doesn't know, or she doesn't have the same struggles as a dark-skinned woman, right? So I was saying like she may be on the right track, right? Because Zendaya, I think, has been quoted as saying some things that are problematic about, colorism and race and being biracial and things like that. So it seems like she may be on the right path to perhaps, waking up, right? And as well, like if we did hear Zendaya Coleman complaining, we would react kind of like the same way, because it's like, no, you benefit a lot from being a light-skinned, racially ambiguous black woman, right? She gets to claim that fill up a black quota, right? Well, at the same time, if they do want someone who is not black and perhaps is another ethnicity, she could perhaps fill up that quota as well, right? But thankfully, Zendaya has not been on the record as complaining about her privilege, because if she did, she'd get a lot of backlash, and she already kind of dealt with backlash from that Aaliyah situation. I think she'll really want it again, I don't really hear the men complaining about colorism. Dark skin or light skin, actually. Yeah, because I'm sure like they could probably have some stories to say, perhaps. But I think the thing is, when it comes to the men in the industry, though, the dark skinned dudes seem to be being the ones uplifted. So okay, we got them squared away. Okay, they're done. As far as the light skinned dudes, could they have something to say? But the thing is, you really don't hear them saying anything. They do have an opinion, but they kind of don't really speak on it, though. And perhaps they may feel a certain way about speaking on it, too. For one reason, I don't think there's really a space for men to really express their grievances in situations like this. But also, I think maybe perhaps they don't want to be viewed a certain way, too, Especially when it comes to like the lighter skinned dudes, it's like, oh, you're just being emotional and complaining and, feeling entitled because you light, so you gotta be right, But it's a little different for women, right? Women can kind of get away with doing that to an extent, at least. But I think ultimately, when it comes to like, I guess the light-skinned struggle, it usually revolves around people not acknowledging your blackness, right? Or maybe acknowledging it only to a certain extent, right? But when it comes to dark-skinned people's experience with colorism and their struggles, it seems to really revolve around people kind of viewing you a certain way, like, oh, your nappy hair, or you have, you know, really, broad, talk about, the facial features, being compared to animals at times. Um, and then if you do look good, especially if you like a dark skinned woman, they still kind of want to remind you that, well, you are dark skinned. You're pretty for a dark skinned girl. They still want to feel like they need to remind you of that. Feel the need to emphasize that, right? you know. So I think when it comes to the colorism that dark skinned people experience, it's kind of like people go after like them, right? In their features. And when it comes to like light skinned people tend to more so just attack like, oh, you ain't black enough. Like, you ain't black enough. And I mean, I know if you identify a certain way, that can be kind of like annoying, and it can even turn into like a struggle and maybe do something to you, perhaps mentally, at maybe even up to a certain point. But I think comparing the both of those struggles, it's like, well, you do at least kind of benefit from looking not so black. But what's the benefit of, do the dark skinned folks benefit from looking dark skinned? Hmm, I guess in some situations, perhaps. But I feel like there's probably more of a benefit to looking less black than to looking black in the big scheme of things, right? Overall, right? In the community, we can kind of, perhaps have some discussion, but overall, yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about for this video. And I just wanted to get your opinions about this because this is sort of a topic that's interesting. Who gets to complain about colorism? If we had, I think both people can, I guess, speak their piece and talk about their grievances, but when it comes to actually taking up a space, and being the people, representing the people who are disadvantaged for colorism, I would say ultimately it would be darker skinned people. You know, I wouldn't want to see lighter skinned people taking up a space that darker skinned people should be taking up, if anyone's taking up that space, because I really feel like the struggle isn't as bad for lighter skinned people. Yeah, we do struggle, but it's like you have to recognize, like, and stop being like so self-centered and look at the person beside you, right? To the left or to the right of you, and like, okay, compare yourself to that person. You know, are your struggles the same? You know where I'm getting at. But I guess that's all I have to say. So thanks a lot for watching. Definitely give feedback, commentary. It's very appreciated and needed as well. So thanks for watching. Adios and goodbye for now.